It's been a minute since we talked about some proper video game mechanics here, so allow me to take this opportunity to point you back to the weapons that we have. By now, if you've been diligent about upgrading your weapons all the way, odds are all of your stuff is going to be max level. This not only goes for your weapons, but it also goes for your Oni orbs as well. So, I guess a fair question to ask would be, what else can you spend your EXP on? Well, back during the very beginning of this series, I mentioned how you could upgrade finite resources to make them stronger. All of your finite resources take red orbs just like anything else does, and if you want something to prioritize because you already have your weapons and orbs maxed out, probably hard focus into upgrading as many herbs as you can. Alternatively, you could spend red orbs to upgrade things like arrows and bullets, and these are useful too, they do more damage with their respective weapon, but upgrading herbs into medicine is a pretty huge benefit. Do note that upgrading an herb isn't exactly the cheapest thing to afford a lot of the time. It takes exactly 1 orb gauge to upgrade a herb into a medicine container. Herbs will roughly heal you about 1/4 of your health bar, give or take, but medicine will always fully heal your HP bar, which is obviously way more valuable. Knowing exactly how much health you're going to get out of a healing item makes it much easier for rationing. And making it a consistent number that heals your health all the way back up means that you're allowed to take a lot more risks. Ultimately though, if you wanted more firepower, then there's nothing wrong with upgrading the bullets or the arrows. Both the bow and the matchlock are basically Resident Evil magnums, which is to say if left to their own devices, they could bore a hole into the center of the earth. So it's not like unreasonable to upgrade those either, they're showstoppers for sure. But let's go ahead and circle back to the regular weapons. As I said before, by now, all of your equipment should be maxed out. And through your utilization of this equipment, hopefully you found a pretty nice niche for all of them. The Raizan acts as a good pistol equivalent. If you don't really know what weapon to take with you into a fight, it has a good balance of both speed and power. That's not even mentioning its magic attack, which by now is capable of one-shotting every regular enemy in the game. And in terms of single target damage, this is probably the best use case for it. The Shipu with its blades at both ends means that you are allowed to attack multiple enemies at once. And because of the angle of attacks, it's capable of not only hitting multiple enemies, but also hitting enemies that are, hard to hit normally. Because this weapon also basically makes you one big hitbox, it makes E-Sen counters extremely easy to trigger as well. I know I haven't brought up E-Sens yet, but I'm finding a good time to talk about them, we'll get to that soon. But don't forget that the Shipu's tornado magic is also, a good AoE magic. If you find a room with way too many guys in it, then just hit triangle once and they're all gone. That's it, that's all you need to do. And finally, the Inryu. The fire greatsword capable of doing a bunch of damage. Weirdly, I think the more important aspect of this weapon is the weapon itself and not its magic, which is sort of antithetical to every other weapon in Onimusha. I've mentioned it about 100 times already, but, as I've said before, there's no such thing as bad magic in Onimusha. The Enryu's wave of fire hitting a line as it creeps across the ground is definitely good still, it's just going to be hard to hit more than one enemy. And because you already have the Raizan's good single target attack, the Enryu just kinda comes off as a weird in-between. It's also the only magic attack that allows enemies to attack you while you're performing it, so long as you haven't already slammed the blade in the ground, which means it has some windup before it actually unleashes any damage. So I guess a good niche for the Enryu's magic might be a good ranged option, making it the only renewable ranged attack in the entire game. And I mean sure, that's cool. Alternatively, you could just use the big greatsword, which is capable of 2 or 3 shotting basic enemies. And I only just thought about this, but if we're going with this line of thinking, you can kinda see the Enryu as the ultimate all-or-nothing weapon. Maybe you have a comfortable amount of health and you don't really mind how slow the weapon swings. But maybe you're running out of healing resources, or you don't have any health in general, and you just want to attack enemies from range using its magic attack. And I've got on record before saying that Capcom just knows how to make weapons in a video game feel good. I made a whole video about it, but don't watch it, it's old and cringy. But I still think they're the best in the business for just, really understanding how all of this plays together, Like, yeah, we only have 3 main weapons in Onimusha, but each of those weapons cover their bases so well that you don't really mind how little you have in terms of gameplay variety. Our boy Samanosuke is so skilled with any one of these weapons that, well, he doesn't really feel out of place for using any one of them. If you couple all these factors together, like the weapon's design, their implementation, where you use them and how you should be using them, there's a strong argument to be made that these weapons kind of have their own personality, almost. Like, no, none of these weapons have any spoken or even written dialogue or anything, but they have obvious pros and cons. And it's all of these factors that could allow you to have sort of a favorite weapon out of these three. Whether it be purely aesthetic or because of how they function or any number of things. And I don't know, that's kind of special. It always feels good whenever you get your stats maxed out in a video game, just like any video game. It's like you compare your numbers to how you were at the beginning of the game and it's just like, hell yeah, you know what I mean? And in similarly related hell yeah news, we got the Great Armor. The largest defense upgrade in the game, capable of stopping trains, quite frankly, if I'm allowed to be hyperbolic. It's also just so snazzy looking, look at it go. Now wouldn't it suck if we had all this ripped away from us because of a Kaide segment? No, wait, hold on. Okay, so we've entered the Kaide Hour Part 2. I don't really have anything else to say because, again, Kaide doesn't have anything new going on, hardly ever. And I very badly want to just skip on to something else and go back to Samanosuke, but no, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to talk about these secondary playable characters in Capcom games. And why I think these segments kind of fail in that regard. Now that I think about it, this would make a pretty good topic for its own separate video, but let's go ahead and lump it in here. So think about all the times in Resident Evil games where you play as another character. Think about your Resident Evil 2s and how you're playing as, like, Sherry or Ada, for example. Resident Evil 3 has Carlos, Resident Evil 4 has Ada again with Assignment Ada, or Separate Ways, and stuff like that, right? Why do those segments work so well? For me, their strongest moments boil down to brevity and also player power. Any instance you're playing as Ada or Carlos, for example, you're basically a glass cannon the whole time. Yeah, Ada isn't necessarily the strongest character. Whenever she gets hit, she takes a bunch of damage, but she has explosive power. She's able to move around and kick enemies, and she moves really fast. You go through practically the entire game as Ada in Resident Evil 4, but instead of just like walking everywhere, she has a grappling hook, which allows her to expedite a lot of the traveling. This falls in line with her existing characteristics. She's a sort of secret agent gun for hire that just does whatever she wants, however she can, and she values speed and a job well done above everything else. Except for maybe Leon, and sometimes that goes through in the story itself regarding these little playable segments. Not only are most of these characters extremely capable, but also you don't play as them for very long. And you're really not supposed to. Think back on Resident Evil 2, right? Whenever you beat the game, you unlock the fourth survivor. The fourth survivor is a post-game auxiliary mode that lets you play as Hunk, an absolutely mythic character in terms of Resident Evil lore. Depending on what version of Resident Evil 2 you play, either the remake or the original version, the Fourth Survivor modes in these games opt to not give you any ammo that drops from enemies. There's no way to get pistol or TMP or shotgun ammo or anything like that. Instead, you're supposed to ration your resources by going through the game as quick as possible. Typically, it's the entirety of the game, and you're more or less just speedrunning with an incredibly overpowered kit. This empowers the player, but also makes it to where you don't play the game for very long, so there's no, like, ugly overstaying its welcome sort of feelings, right? So then think about all the Capcom games you've ever played, where you've had these other moments where you play as these other characters, and then think about Kaide. Why do these moments fail? I understand I'm being a little bit rough here. It's not like these segments are all that bad, I've mentioned that before, but they're not exactly highlights of the gameplay. Kaide is not a particularly powerful character. The most stopping power you have during these segments is the kunai. Again, ranged Onimusha weapons, so, you know, they're pretty goofy strong, but even still they're the weakest of the ranged weaponry. She doesn't get the ability to absorb demon souls, which is another problem, and this is fine on the surface, but it means that she can't restore her health unless she uses healing items. And this is a pretty big nerf just given how, you know, again, the healing resources are shared between Seminosuke and Kaide. It's a giant punishment, and as a result, you kind of don't look forward to playing as Kaide because if you make a mistake, it's on the more dire side of mistakes you can make. What's worse is that there's not really any real way to fix this. If Kaide was just overtly powerful, there would be some narrative dissonance involved with her capabilities versus the demons you fight, and that's not really any good. I actually think this segment plays a lot better because you don't have any forced fights, it's just a straight run to the end and then you go back and save Seminosuke. In this way, I actually think the Kaide segment is much better because, well again, it fits her playstyle better. You're running around, you're being a ninja, and you're not taking any damage, you're just getting your mission done. That's all you need to do. It just kinda sucks because there's not really any cool factor going on with Kaide. She's not running around with a grappling hook, she's not running on rooftops, or, you know, doing any cool platforming stuff, or pseudo-platforming stuff, and I think that's a really big missed opportunity for a ninja character. Despite my reservations, I will insist that these are not really all that big of a problem in the grand scheme of things. Kaide, in every sense of the word, is the worst part about this game, but it's not like she's offensively bad, or her segments are offensively bad or anything. It's just a particularly sour spot, and given that she's lumped in with the puzzle room, the infamous drowning puzzle room, it's really not doing her any favors either. The other games in this series do the other playable character segments much better in many ways, but it's not exactly a good idea to talk about them now. I just sort of think that they fumbled the bag here, and once again, I don't know, I don't really like these segments all that much. The second part is better, the first part is a little bit worse, and neither of them are highlights. They're lowlights, if anything. And I don't know, I just think that kinda sucks.
A monster's coming! Watch out!
I knew you would come. You are so impressive for a mere human. But you are late. Our dark ceremony is starting. Yumamoru will be sacrificed in front of Princess Yuki.
No!
Princess Yuki cherishes Yumamoru. If he is sacrificed in front of her, her sorrow will peak, making her blood its most delicious and strongest, granting our Lord Nobunaga more power when he drinks it.
That is why you took them? You will suffer for that!
Now, my dear baby, consume that human over there at once!
Okay, pause real quick again. I don't actually know if this boss is supposed to be hard. She's a giant flying bug monster that's hard to hit with a melee weapon. And ever since I got the bow, do you remember whenever I told y'all I'm going to be saving my ammo for one very specific reason? Well, what would sound like the immediate counter to a flying enemy? Ranged weaponry, obviously. Let's continue. I once again have no idea if this fight is supposed to be particularly hard. Hopefully you understand by now that boss fights in Onimusha, or any fight in Onimusha for that matter, become a lot less difficult whenever you pull out the neutral special. I've said it once, I'll say it again, do not sleep on the gun, don't sleep on the bow, use these weapons. They're literally better in terms of damage as opposed to the literal magic Oni weapons. Don't know why, but it's pretty silly. Let's continue on here.
Kaede. Hang on, Kaede. Rest here for a while. This nightmare must end! Now! Princess Yuki, Imemaru, I will save you!
I haven't had much opportunity to talk about the music in Onimusha, but it, like everything else in the game, is surprisingly good. This track here serves as kind of a victory lap for you going to the Demon Gate and finally confronting the worst that the Demon World has to offer. But before we do that, I have a promise to fulfill. We are armed to the teeth, we don't need our bullets to be saved for anything else anymore, we can use our bow if we really need to, and I can also take this opportunity to finally mention the Isen counter system. This is a secret mechanic that exists throughout the entirety of Onimusha. We've had the ability to use it all game, it's just that the game doesn't feel the need to tell us how to do it. To perform an Isen counter, all you have to do is attack the enemy at the correct time. Just before an enemy attack makes contact with you, press the attack button and you'll do a one-shot move. This works on every regular enemy in the game, and the tell for it is a lot more auditory than visual. If you hear the end portion of a whoosh from a sword or something, that's your cue to attack. Not only is this capable of one-shotting enemies, but it also always nets you a yellow soul to refill some of your health. And yes, this even includes the Dark Realm. It also nets you some bonus red orbs, and there is a guard version of an Isen that you can also perform. This is simply based off of blocking at the correct time. If you really want to feel like a samurai in these games, the Isen counter is the way to do it. They're sort of the most quantifiable measure of skill and capability in Onimusha. They exist in all of the games, and they always feel good whenever you perform them. I have never mastered the Isen counters, at least not during this playthrough, but utilization and mastery of this mechanic can obviously save your skin in some pretty tight situations. But with all of our resources and knowledge in hand, let's try this again. You could not pay me to take a chance right now. I'm using a soul absorber. Do you see how low my health is? I'm right at the end. Okay, I think we did it. Oh my god, that took 16 minutes of non-stop fighting the whole time. We got the Bishamon Ocarina out of it, which doesn't look like all that yet, but trust me, this is gonna make or break the final boss. Let's go ahead and take our victory lap now.
You pathetic human worm. Impressive you've come this far, but ultimately futile since your journey ends here. Only demons can enter.
You. Why don't you go back to playing with your worthless little toys? I have no time for you.
What did you say? How dare you! A mere human mock me? Fine then. It's time for you to fight my greatest creation! Come on, Celeste! Come on, Celeste! Crush!
Hey look, it's Marcellus again. A large part of me wants to just say that this is the same fight as whenever we fought him on the rooftops, but no, that would be underselling how dangerous this version of Marcellus really is. He's got all the same tricks again, big shield, big sword. He's got this big red glowing sword attack now, and it's completely unblockable, which is a problem, especially considering the Dark Realm took all of my healing items. But the fight gets so much worse whenever you break his shield this time. Double the swords, double the speed, double the damage. This fight sucks. I genuinely don't have any tips here, just get good. That's what he's telling you, and that's what I'm gonna tell you. Dude is pretty relentless, so maybe try to play defensively during this fight. Other than that, well, good luck.
What?
All that work we did on the Dark Realm, it's about to pay off. The Bishamon sword is the most overpowered weapon in Onimusha, like, period. Make no mistake, this does still count as an Oni weapon, but the magic attack doesn't cost anything, and it is stupid overpowered. Whether or not you get the Bishamon Ocarina to get this sword will make the last boss either the easiest fight in the game or the hardest fight in the game, and it's entirely dependent on whether or not you get this sword. If you were wondering, by the way, no, you can't take it out of the Dark Realm, or whatever this area is called, and yeah, that sucks. And you can't even get it in NG Plus either, but oh well. Like I said, victory lap, let's just get this over with.
I am Fortune Draw. Welcome to our little ceremony. Come here, Nobunaga. Drink her blood from the grail of despair.
Stop! Even if I die, I will destroy you! Kaede, let's get out of here!
Sasuke! I'm fine.
We cannot stay here any longer. Run!
Yumemaru!
There is no escape from me!
Forget about me! Go! Yuki, Kaede, Yume, Maru.
The demon's ambitions were shattered by the hand of Samanosuke and his friends. However, when Yoshitatsu Saito died the following year, his feeble-minded son, Tatsuoki, became the Lord. At that time, Oda's army returned to Mino Province and conquered the Inabayama Castle, putting an end to the history of the Saito family. However, it is unknown as to whether demons were involved.
And there we go. We don't have much in the way of an epilogue, so let's just go ahead and wrap this up. Princess Yuki goes off and sees the world much like Samanosuke, seeing the world with her own eyes and experiencing everything life has to offer. Yumimaro follows suit, traveling alongside Princess Yuki, and who knows, maybe we see him again one day in a future game or something. That'd be pretty cool. Kaida goes and looks for the now missing Samanosuke, and much to her chagrin, she doesn't end up finding him anywhere. This little text blurb also mentions that Kaide randomly dies in the middle of a war that has nothing to do with her or Samanosuke for some reason. What, okay? That seems weirdly mean-spirited. Why would that, why? Just, what? Wait, hold on. Yeah? What do you mean it happened in a game nobody played? And it was a 2D fighter that nobody liked. Okay, well now I feel really bad. And to this day, Samanosuke is still missing. Now ashamed of his newfound Oni powers, he doesn't really know how to handle himself, so he just kinda wanders the world. A real wandering samurai type. And that's it. That's Onimusha Warlords. The first game in a mostly forgotten series that has tried its best to be relevant, and it just never happened. I, of course, have thoughts and closing statements, plural, and a whole bunch of other stuff I want to talk about, so let's go ahead and start off with some stuff that I didn't mention in the main gameplay. Lesser known factoid, if you get caught in a grab attack, the QTE-ish thing to get out of them is to wiggle the left and right directional keys back and forth as fast as you can. It's not pressing a button, it's literally just moving left and right. It's pretty easy to pull off on just about any enemy in the game, and whenever you know that it's a thing you can do, you can escape any grab attack just with ease. I didn't do a great job of showing any of that off because that was information that only became privy to me pretty recently, like literally a couple of days ago whenever I was doing more research for this game. In completely unrelated news, I really wish there was more going on with the characterization in this game just as a blanket statement. Out of all the games that I played, taking the role of a samurai and having that be sort of the protagonist of a game is not something I'm normally privy to. I have a newfound appreciation for characters like Samanosuke because of the fact that he's a globe-trotting samurai. I think that concept is just really cool, sort of having a character mix their cultures and have their morals tested and, you know, just their worldviews change because the world is so much wider than they were expecting, and that stuff's cool to me. It's for a lot of the same reasons that I think William from the Neo games is a really cool character. The script is flipped a little bit in that instance, but I don't know, I just think that's really interesting. Melding fighting styles together and coming up with new techniques and using a whole host of different weaponry and stuff, and that stuff's cool, I just like that. For all of the narrative influences regarding the Onimusha series, it's kinda weird how we don't see very much of Oda Nobunaga. If you've played any Japanese-centered media in the past 20 years, give or take, he's a pretty prominent figure because he's a real-life historical warlord. In an interesting twist of fate, if you decide to play any Japanese-centered video games, Nobunaga may be a protagonist, a supporting character, an antagonist, or really just anything under the sun. Because this is one of the first Japanese folklore video games I've ever played, it gave me a pretty negative disposition to Nobunaga whenever I would play other games. I always just kind of assumed that he would be an antagonist and that was it, but that's not always the case. And yeah, I just kinda wish there was more being done here to show you that Oda Nobunaga is a complex character. That goes for about everybody in this cast, though. The very last gameplay thing I can mention, fluorite chunks. I ended up with 18. You get a goofy costume for Samanosuke that makes him wear a panda outfit. It's not all that interesting or really all that funny, it's just kinda weird. And 20 will end up giving you a sort of minigame-ish thing, where you basically run around and pop these urns to release Oni souls. If you make it all the way through the end of this little side mode, you get a hard mode difficulty, bumps up the enemy stats, and that's pretty much it. Kind of a cool thing, if you also collect 10 fluorite, then you get a trailer for Onimusha 2. It's a really early concept trailer, but it's a good teaser for what else is coming out of this series. They so badly wanted to make this a franchise that they immediately started making a second game in this series, practically at the same time that Onimusha 1 was being developed. But the topic of Onimusha 2 as a video game would be better left for an Onimusha 2 video, so let's just move on for something else. If you're at all interested in playing the game yourself, you obviously have things like the PS2 original, there's an Xbox version that goes under a different name. Don't start off with that one, I'll talk about it in a sec. And then you also have the remaster for PS4. Very recently, another remaster for Onimusha 2 also came out, which is cool, and maybe we'd get the third game too someday, that would be cool. That one's my favorite. The Onimusha 1 remaster has a couple of little technical issues associated with it. Yeah, everything looks cleaner, but it sort of borks the music. And in terms of a 100% pure experience, it has some problems. If you don't like tank controls though, I don't know, maybe pick it up and play it. Removes the tank controls and gives you full analog stick movement. Maybe that's a benefit, maybe that's a perk for you. Onimusha is a weird series, man. Time after time, with each new game in this series, Capcom has been trying their hardest to throw this game into a proper limelight, bringing it into the mainstream with less than success each and every time. Whenever I first set out to make this video, I was doing it for the sake of the new game coming out. As we currently stand, there's really no way to tell what kind of game Onimusha Way of the Sword is going to be. No idea of its quality, of what gameplay mechanics it's going to entail, whether or not it's going to reach the public zeitgeist in any capacity, or really anything. It's just a bunch of question marks, and the more I think about Way of the Sword, the more questions I have. Onimusha as an IP has simply just performed way better in Japan. It never really got a following in the States, or anywhere outside of Japan for that matter. I didn't give any sales figures whenever I was talking about it the first time, but here's some sales figures. And over the course of me making this project, I've really gone on to just appreciate the efforts that Capcom did for making this game be the way it is. The efforts of Takeshi Kaneshiro and everybody else on the dev team. They could have stopped at any point, relegating the rest of the series to be a Japanese exclusive franchise after Onimusha Warlords, but for some reason or another, that wasn't the case. They really tried with these games, they continued to try, and at the end of it all, we got a couple of really good games from a series that nobody really played, with its mechanics and storytelling being kind of influential for video games as a whole going forward. Credit it will most likely never really get. If you don't believe me in this fact, then may I remind you of the whole David Jaffe playing Onimusha Warlords, liking it and saying let's do that but with Greek mythology. God of War, and by some extension the rest of the character action genre, would have been a very different game, a very different genre. I've had a couple of weird instances just telling me that my life is a strange Ouroboros of, one big cycle over and over again. I grew up with a FromSoft game as well, weirdly enough, so I actually have some stake in saying that I grew up with some version of Dark Souls of all things. Once again, that's another story for a different time. But over the course of doing this project, and specifically this project, I've grown a lot of appreciation for Onimusha. As I said before, and will continue to say, there's no telling what Onimusha Way of the Sword is going to pan out to be. Is it just going to be another pretty good game that nobody really pays attention to? Possibly, that could be in the cards, as sad as that is to say. It could also just be an outright bad game, sullying what little legacy it has over here in the States. Whatever this series decides to look like in the future, I just hope that one day, Onimusha, as an idea, as a concept, gets its due diligence one day. Because it really does deserve it, in my opinion. Practically the entire time I've been getting footage and making this video, I just really want to play Demon Siege, because I think that's the best game in the series. Fight me on it if you want to. And I don't really know. At the end of the day, Onimusha is a lot of things. It's got some good, it's got some bad that ebbs towards mid, and it's got a whole lot of ugly that can either appear on either sides of the extreme spectrum a lot of the time. But now that everything's said and done, I guess that's it. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart following me on this journey today. It's been a learning experience for me, especially as someone who's grown up with these games and wants to give them proper credit. I've come to understand that I really need to do something better with these RTLGs. Something that makes them more watchable. Something that isn't just a pure runtime of explaining every minute detail of a game, because that doesn't really work for me, it seems. Or at least that's what YouTube tells me, in any case. And that isn't just me pandering to an algorithm or anything. Whenever it comes to writing and making videos, I much more prefer the short, snappy, comedic writing style that has some, real thought-provoking meaning and words behind it. I guess just, writing that's more efficient, if you wanted to sum it up in a single sentence. Now we might just have the chance to do that probably pretty soon here. Because we're not done with Onimusha 1. We're done with Warlords, this game is finished, this is everything I wanted to say for Onimusha, but not for the entirety of the first game. For those of you who maybe have played this game, did you know that there was an Xbox exclusive hard mode port that does a bunch of changes? Because I didn't until just last week, basically. Whenever I decided to research into that topic, I discovered another equally Onimusha-sized rabbit hole that I decided to jump headfirst down into. And the story of that one's similarly pretty interesting. If you wanted a little teaser for what something like that even looks like, they put a Mr. X in Onimusha. I'm not kidding, here, look. So yeah, that's awful, and we're gonna talk about it. So, I hope you'll join me again for next week, whenever we talk about Genma Onimusha. The super niche port of an even more niche video game. It's gonna be a good time, I think. But for now, let me go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video today, then as always, a like, comment, subscription, Discord join, Patreon join, all that good stuff. It goes a super long way to making this a day job for me. If I'm gonna be honest, I'm at a little bit of a crossroads here for my life in a personal sense. This last year and a half of making YouTube videos has been some of the most fulfilling my life has ever been. And even if you decide to do nothing else other than watch this video to the end, then hey, thank you, honestly. Patreon shoutouts as always goes over to Stefan over on patreon.com. If you feel like supporting me, subscriptions start at $1 a month. They can give you access to things like sneak peeks of videos, full videos before they pop up on YouTube. Might even do some bonus video stuff later on in the future too. I think I can finally wrap up now though. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again next Friday. It'll be a fun one, I promise. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day everybody.